Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. Well, continuing on with the Camp EJC series. Next up, we last spoke about Woodmere Park and that, and now we're going to talk about what they called outer limits. Somewhere in Queens, they would get us on a bus, and they would drive us out to this place that was a school, used to be a school, I don't really know, but it was fucking even in more disrepair than the actual camp. They would drive us out here, they would bring balls, and I guess we'd play dodgeball in the parking lot. Now, I told you about the basketball hoops and the broken down bus in the previous part, and how there were rocks and sand. This was worse. The pavement was broken up. There was a lot more sand, and sometimes kids would fall, and they'd get scraped up pretty damn good. As you know, as you're outside and life goes on, nature calls, and sometimes kids had to go to the bathroom. Well, we had access to this, and I seem to remember it was a college, but I'm not sure on that. It was not, nothing was in session that I could tell. I don't even know how this building was in operation still, if it was, but I remember one time I did have to pee, and I had gone to the bathroom. Now, the old school urinals, these are the kind that are on the wall, but they're not just the little tighty-whitey ones that we see today, especially these low flush and that. These are the ones where it's set into the wall, and it goes down into the floor and sinks below the floor. So you basically pee on the wall, and it cascades down, and then you had your flush lever. There was no automatic flush in these days. And that was that, and they had the brown paper towels. Now, everything was scummy and disgusting in this bathroom. God only knows if some of the toilets flushed or didn't. I think somebody once took a shit in the urinal. The brown paper towels I remember seeing in like 3 of the urinals once. At one time, this place was in such shambles. It was a disgrace to even bring the kids there. And just to play dodgeball, I mean, they didn't have the real estate at the place for you to do that, because if other kids are playing basketball, then there's no room for dodgeball. It's that simple. Well, that was that. So outer limits was something. Now, when you got, because they had different age groups also. Now, remember, you had the boys and the girls. Oh, we were called the Maccabees because it's Jewish. That was the group I was in. I just remember that. So some biblical bullshit from back in the day. I don't even know. Anyway, we were called that, and they had other names for other stuff. So the older kids, my sister's 2 years older than me, and it was just her birthday 2 days ago. So happy birthday, in case you're not watching. And I sent her a card, electronic card. Anyways, we would go, the older kids, I didn't get to go, but my sister got to go. They would take them on really cool trips, and they took them to Green Acres Mall. Now, Green Acres Mall is in Valley Stream, New York, really the next town over from Elmont. These kids were maybe 12 years old. Not really at the point where you would want to really be left alone in the mall. Now, this varies across the country from state to state and region to region, but let's suffice it to say that when you go to Green Acres, you don't even want to be in the parking lot, much less in the mall itself. This is a bad area. Green Acres, there were always stabbings, muggings, shootings, cars broken into, cars stolen, pocketbooks snatched, all kinds of stuff. It's a bad place to be. And here they are, okay kids, and they've let them run fucking loose in the mall. Now, if you had money, you could buy stuff. If you didn't, well, you just go around with your friends and camp, and that was that. So they'd run around for maybe an hour, and then they'd say, okay, it's 12 o'clock, everybody meet back here at 1. So that was that. Switching from well, let's see what's next on the list, actually. So I never got to go on the Green Acres trip. My sister did. And she met this girl, I think her name might have been Katrina, actually. And before this was a hurricane. And, anyways, she was awesome, she said. She lived in Bayside, Queens, same place I got Ginger, the car, from. And she was awesome. Her father was wealthy. He would lease cars when this was not even a popular thing. And she was really friendly with her. And my dad actually came in to speak to Dave Wool once and ask him if my sister could get on the bus, because they had independent bus service that would take Katrina back to Queens in Bayside where she lived. And because my sister would want to see her outside of camp, and then my dad would go and pick her up later, or her dad would drive my sister home or something like that. And I remember being in the office with Dave and my dad, and Dave's like, no, I can't do that. My insurance won't cover it. And this, of course, was despite the fact that the kids were allowed on the same independent bus company's buses with the same insurance to go on these field trips, day trips to Green Acres Mall and all that. All my dad was asking was my sister take the same bus under the same everything to a friend's house, and that was it. And the guy was just a total hard ass about it. What? I don't know. But anyway, that was Katrina. Okay, so here's, yeah, I guess I went a little out of order. They would also take us bowling every now and again. Bowling was interesting because you'd come out of the place. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, there was a house or some building of some kind, like a bigger house that was turned into a business or something, I think, but still looked like a house, that had burned down, was boarded up, that was directly across the street from this place, and there was a sign that said, "Build to suit." So I guess they were selling it cheap. I don't know whatever happened. It was always burned down when I was there. But what a nice place to look at when you're ready in a place in a lot of disrepair. And I looked at the sign and I said, don't they mean build to shit? So that was interesting. But there was a little strip mall shopping center or something, kind of like across the street and like a block over maybe, something. And there was a bowling alley. So they're taking us bowling for the first time this year. And we turn out of the parking lot. And I remember one of the kids saying, "Hey, where the hell are you going? Elmont Lanes is right over here." No, where did they take us? They took us to West Hempstead Bowl. Of all places, West Hempstead Bowl. The same town that I fucking lived in. They took us to the shitty bowling alley there, and I think I told the story of the elevator in the Old War Stories with Uncle Jay, scary elevators when I was a kid. I believe I told the story of that really slow elevator there, so I'll skip that. You can refer back to that video. And no, I don't do cards on the screen or any of that shit anyway, because then that detracts from the rest of this video. I'll forget to put a link in the prescription, but nobody reads it anyway, so who gives a flying fuck through a rolling donut? Okay, let's see what else here. Okay, now the back of the place had the picnic tables, and you can go one way to the basketball hoops and that, or the other way to the baseball area, the two pools, and the arts and crafts shed over there. As you'd walk down the concrete thing, when you get almost to the end of the path, if you will, there was more overgrowth from the chain link fence. And whatever this was, I think it was growing like up, and it had berries. You ever have a plant or something that drops these berries and they're like a dark red to purple looking stuff, and everybody steps on them and it squishes, and then there's like berry guts all over the concrete, and there's berries everywhere, and it's red and purple and fucking anywhere. There were berries fucking everywhere. So we were making the wine for the fucking, you know, for the Jewishness later. But that was the area. So that was the berries going to the pool. It's like, can somebody cut this stuff down? This place was in such disrepair. I couldn't freaking believe it. It was that bad. It really was. Let's see what else here. There were two pools, the boys and the girls' pool. The girls' pool was nicer. That was the farther pool. That had like tile in it, and it was really a nice crystal blue and looked nice and this and that. The boys' pool was not. Now, we had the same bullshit line of, if you don't do instructional swim, you can't do free swim in the afternoon. So I said, and I did this because the other two camps, the water was always too damn cold. So I said, okay, fine. I won't go to instructional swim, and I won't go to free swim. I'm going to sit over here in the shade and just watch. Because I didn't want to get fucking freezing. Because then they take you in to go to lunch, and you're still wet. You change out of your bathing suit, you're still wet, and then you go into this room that's 40 fucking degrees. Not a fun time. So, you know, because they wouldn't take you swim right after lunch, you know. So, anyways, the girls' pool was nicer. The boys' pool was not as nice. I think also it had a leak. That's because there was a hose spigot, and there was a door there that they would store equipment for the pool. Not sure exactly what was in there. Maybe some balls and some other stuff and this and that. I don't really remember. But there was a hose spigot with a hose that was on every day. For whatever reason, the water that came out of this pipe was like 32 fucking degrees. It was almost shooting ice cubes out. I don't remember how I found this out. I don't remember how I found this out for sure. But it was always on all day, every day. It was on in the morning and in the afternoon. Because sometimes kids would lift it up and try to spray other kids with it or something. But it just was. And there was another little thing about the little pamphlet for the camp that I had read, and it said that they had a concrete filtered pool. That's interesting, the way they worded that. Concrete filtered. Now, there was no punctuation in there like a comma, which would have mean it's a pool that is concrete that is then also filtered. It said it's a concrete filtered pool. And I remembered asking one of the girl counselors in one of the communal times, I said, it says that the pool is concrete filtered. What is a concrete filter? Obviously, the counselor had no idea what in the hell I was talking about or what it was. Now that I own a pool, it doesn't exist. But she said, what else do you want us to filter it with? Because I always said, like, how would water go through concrete? I know it has all the little holes and stuff in that, you know, the little, just look at any sidewalk. It's not smooth, you know, absolutely smooth. It's got little all over it. I'm like, how do they pass through? Did they get like a special kind of, do they have cinder blocks that they, I don't know. So that was an odd one, I remember. Maybe, let's see. The pool shed Yeah. Okay, I think we could finish it up on this part. The I'm sorry, the arts and crafts shed was half shared with the equipment for the pool. So the boys' pool, with that room in the building, that was the machine room, and that's where the pumps were and the filter and all that. For the girls' pool, there was no other building, and the girls' pool was off to the side, but they had this shed, and the shed there was half used for arts and crafts and half used for the pool equipment. And I remember Dave going in there once and backwashing the filter. Dave had to do this stuff. They didn't have a guy that did this. I don't know. Just odd. And I remember he kind of told me a bit about it, but I didn't really understand exactly what he was talking about. Don't know what kind of filter it was either, but it sure as hell wasn't concrete. But there was water service plumbed to that building. They used black plastic pipe, black plastic PVC pipe. This is a flexible type pipe that we use in this part of the world on Long Island for in-ground sprinklers. Other parts of the world use white PVC rigid pipe, but here we use that stuff. So that's how this was. I don't know if they had an actual pipe going to this little shed, and I think there was a sink in the arts and crafts part. But the pool stuff was there, and there were 2 water fountains. So they had maybe a hose spigot on there with a hose that came off that went into a T, and then there was black pipe that ran to the other water fountain and this water fountain here. And I remember there was a hose clamp there, and the clamp, of course, is one of the screw type clamps, just a regular hose clamp that you would have on a radiator on a car, something like that. But, you know, as you screw it down, there's the, I don't know, tab, if you will, that comes through that, you know, because the clamp has to be larger than the hose and that. But they used way too large of a hose clamp, so now you had a tab that's this long, and kids would play with it, and they bent it out, so now you have another sharp dagger that could cut somebody, and that was just there. God forbid somebody takes a pair of tin snips and cuts that shit off. No, no. But, like, I don't know if the clamps weren't tightened down, but these water fountains were leaking all day, all night. Nobody ever gave a shit or fixed it. In the 2 or even 3 years I was there, they were leaking the entire time. The entire time. It's just a wonder. And it was just a shot. It was like a shanty, this shed. It was metal, so it was really hot because it would bake in the sun. Oh, and right outside, I'll get to the arts and crafts in a second, but right outside that was the baseball area that was overgrown with grass and weeds, and nobody gave a shit. And I remember, like, standing there, playing baseball. I'm not into sports. I hate sports, okay? I always sucked at them, hated gym in school, and here I am standing in the summer, maybe with a hat on, hot sun, and I remember my head like fucking baking. And it was so hot, like I couldn't even hold my hat. It was that hot. It was ridiculously hot. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we even doing this? But arts and crafts. Well, there was one kid that I got a little bit friendly with. His name was Paul, and he lived in Valley Stream. He lived in Valley Stream, and Paul was kind of cool. We got along, and we talked and that. And I'm going to have to change the battery in just a minute, but let me see if I can just get this in. Arts and crafts in camp, they gave you a lanyard. The lanyard was cool, and they gave you other stuff to do, and this and that. But Paul started to chant, and it was simply, arts and farts are for retards, arts and farts are for retards, and everybody was singing it and shit like that, and the art lady was getting more and more pissed off, and because we didn't want to be there, we either wanted the pool or the kids wanted baseball or basketball or something else and that. Anyway, let me change the battery and we'll wrap this up. Actually, I don't know. Yeah, I think we'll just make this a little bit longer. Yeah, we'll just make it a little longer. Let me get another battery. Okay, so like I was telling you about that kid Paul. Paul was nice, we got along and that, and we actually exchanged phone numbers and we were going to talk on the phone. But I remembered I had tried calling him because we took we had discussed, I'll call you at 5 o'clock or so, I don't know what it was. And I called and it was busy. And it was an odd busy signal. It was not the kind I've heard before. It sounded deeper in tone. And this was because back in the day, we still had Ma Bell. And different telephone stations or whatever offices had different equipment. And apparently he had like a crossbar 1 instead of a crossbar 5 or something like that. And the busy signal sounded differently. And I had tried calling him a number of times that day, and it was just busy, and it never went through. And I told him the next day, and he's like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he gave me the wrong number, who knows, I don't know. But I never did get to talk to him on the phone. No idea whatever happened to him. One last one about this place that I can possibly remember was, actually two things. There were these kids, like I said, a lot of them were from Queens, and Queens was a worser area, and as such, you had kids that always wanted to pick a fight. Well, there was one kid, Matthew, maybe his name was, can't really remember, and he insisted upon calling me Spacehead. I don't know why. I didn't like it, and I told him, can you stop calling me that? So he said, okay, fine, I'll call you Shithead then. What an asshole. Anyway, that was him. But there was one other kid, his name was Corey. Corey was the bully in the crowd. And Corey once got pissed off at me and grabbed me by the shirt like that. And I ran in to talk to Dave, and Corey got yelled at, and that was that. I don't remember what happened or why, but that was that. And there was one other thing that Corey did I will never forget. He, I guess, got into a fight with another kid. So the cooler counselor, Phil or Gil, if that was even his name, tried to break it up. And I will never forget, Corey turned and punched him right in the gut and knocked the wind out of him. And here I'm seeing Paul, the counselor I really liked. The other guy was okay, but I really liked this guy. And I'm seeing Paul sitting there. You know how it is if you ever have the wind knocked out of you. It's awful. And I was like, what the fuck? Holy shit. I can't believe, and there's nothing, how do you help somebody like that? What do you do? He didn't need CPR or anything like that, but to see the wind knocked out of him, this was bad fucking news. I think the counselor was like 15, actually. That's it. They didn't have kids that were, people that were like 22 even to take care of the kids. They had younger kids. And they were older than us and wiser than us, but, because being 8 to 10 years old, something like that, a 15-year-old is like, wow. So he was like a grown-up to us, almost. But anyway, that's it. EJC, the most fucked up, yet the most fun camp out of all three. Isn't that something? The most rundown, most fucked up everything about how the place was run and all the stories I told you was also the most fun. Maybe it was because I was older yet still and enjoyed it more. I don't really remember, but what an experience. Man, oh man, to have all of these stories, this entire sheet. I ran out of room at the bottom and had to continue up where the sticky shit is, because that's the backside of the other, you know. There's a lot to tell about this. And just to finish the story up, we were then picked up. Remember how I said in, I guess, the first part of the series, how my dad would get us into the Dodge Aspen and drive us in? He would work evenings, and he was available in the morning. So he would get home, go to sleep for a few hours, then get up, take us kids to camp, and then in the afternoon, the two sons that we had picked up from the house in Franklin Square, their mother was then available at that time, and she would pick my sister and I and her two sons up in a, ready for this one, probably this was an 86, 87, maybe 88 Chevrolet Cavalier station wagon. And Patty would end up owning a Cavalier, a 1990. So I don't think it was a 90, but it was a station wagon they made them in, that I remember anyways. And it was the oddest thing. The back seat where I sat on the left side, the driver's side, was, I don't know, with the cushion, but like you'd sit on that and you would sink into the seat like way down. So it was like I was sitting on the floor, and I'd then get out of the car. She'd pull into our driveway. I'd get out of the car, and my dad or my mother would come out, and they'd chit-chat for a little bit, and then eventually my dad would go to work that evening, and that was that. But I'd get out, and there's the cushion, nice and tall, where it was. But it's like you sit on it, it's just right down. I don't know, it was the oddest thing. So it was an uncomfortable ride, to say the least, on the way home after seeing all of that disrepair during the day. Man, what... I still, to this day, cannot even imagine. Oh, and lastly, I keep saying lastly, very, very lastly, on the news, I had seen a story months ago that somebody broke into this place. They had security cameras installed, and they showed surveillance footage of it. They might have damaged something or something. They didn't steal anything, but it got broken into. Great area, like I said. So, like I said, there was a lot to talk about in this. Thank you so much for watching this installment of Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.